Mickey Plyler from WCCP 1049. And Mickey, thanks for joining us this afternoon again. We appreciate you coming back on. Just give us a little preview of this Orange Bowl matchup, if you don't mind, for us.
Yeah, I always appreciate you coming on, you guys, and thanks for having me. It's an interesting matchup. I mean, it's a team that Clemson, I think, can play against. You know, it's interesting that, to me, that Ohio State's weaknesses are Clemson's strengths and vice versa. So it's going to be, I think, a high-scoring affair on paper. This is a team that, there's a little thought there that Clemson might have played Alabama. I don't know how well Clemson matched up with the Crimson Tide. But, Ohio State, if you think about Ohio State, first and foremost, it's a very talented offensive line. It's 4 returning starters and 4 senior returning starters, and Norwell and Lindsey and Marcus Hall in the middle of a huge offensive line. It all starts with Braxton Miller, a Heisman Trophy kind of quarterback that is a 2,000-yard passer and a 1,000-yard rusher and a physical, fast, athletic guy who's perfect for Urban Meyer's offense. And Carlos Hyde, a 235 or 40-pound running back that had over 1,400 yards despite missing a couple of games with the suspension. The receivers are okay. On defense, they have some stars. Ryan Shazier is an All-American candidate linebacker. Curtis Grant's a really good linebacker. And maybe the best corner in the country is Bradley Roby. But they've got a lot of issues as well, especially in those back 4. And the Tigers match up pretty well there. So, it's a national brand. It's a national name. As a team up until last Saturday night was in the national championship game. And, guys, I think probably the most important aspect of this game will be which team gets over their hangover. Both teams coming off losing their last game. And, bowl games a lot of times are about motivation. So which team's going to be ready to play? I think that's the team that will win down in Miami.
Right, and I'm sitting there reading your Friday email bag on talking to and some of these people, talking about, obviously, 5 straight losses to South Carolina and then Dabo being on the hot seat. I mean, what do you think about that?
I think that's crazy. I mean, first and foremost, it needs to be said, losing to South Carolina at Clemson is never acceptable. And losing 5 in a row has never happened before and should never happen again. I don't want to brush over that like that's not important, because it really is. Dabo knows that, the players, the staff, and Clemson people, that goes without saying. But you don't throw away all the progress that's been made because of that. I mean, it's very difficult to say this, but this is not your grandfather's South Carolina program. Right. This is a top 10 program for 3 or 4 of those 5 years. And you don't throw, as far as the hot seat stuff goes, you don't throw away all the progress because of what happened in the one game. Clemson has come an awful long way to be able to beat the LSUs and the Georgias of the world, to be in the top 10 of the BCS rankings throughout the most of the year, a chance to finish in the top 10, a chance to win 32 games in the last 3 years. I mean, you don't throw away all of that. I'm not trying to downplay the significance of the South Carolina losses. That'd be crazy. But even more crazy is to think about Dabo Swinney being on the hot seat. The program is headed in a great direction. I personally think that South Carolina's program is peaked out, and I think you'll see a little down spiral from those guys in the next few years. And I think Clemson's on the uptick right now. And to throw away that progress, I think, would just be crazy.
Well, because you think about South Carolina, this is not, but they couldn't win their own division with, you've got Florida and Georgia were down, Tennessee's down. So you got to think once those teams get back to what they are traditionally, that it's going to be hard for South Carolina, to get back winning the East when they couldn't win it when they weren't very good.
Well, and let's give them credit now. The Gamecocks took advantage of those teams being down by winning a bunch of games. And they can win 11 games maybe, again this year. Now, they took advantage of the state of South Carolina with Marcus Lattimore and Alshon Jeffrey and Stephon Gilmore and some really good football players, Jadeveon Clowney. But those guys are gone. And I'm not sure South Carolina has replaced those guys with that kind of talent. I think that the Gamecocks had their 4 or 5 year heyday. I think they will be. Now, they won't go back to 0-11 or anything like that. I think they're going to be a solid 8-4, 9-3 kind of team, but they won't be a national elite top 10 team, which they've seen. On the other side of it, Clemson loses a lot, but the foundation I think has been laid. Well, solid lines of scrimmage next year, a solid defense, and some incoming freshmen, redshirt freshmen and freshmen are going to help out. An interesting quarterback battle. I just look at the trending and the stocks, and I think Clemson's trending up, and I think that the Gamecocks might have leveled out, and again, they've not replaced the way Clemson has replaced. Todd Boyd's a hard guy to replace, but Cole Stout, Chad Kelly, Deshaun Watson. The Tigers have replaced that kind of talent with that kind of ability. I'm not sure South Carolina has.
Right. I was about to go there with Taj. Where would you rank Taj? Obviously, never beat South Carolina, but how would you rank him in terms of, Clemson quarterbacks and Clemson football history?
Well, personally, the guys I've seen, and I go back to the mid-'70s, and Steve Fuller finished sixth in the Heisman Trophy, and up until the maybe Woody Dancer and Charlie Whitehurst days, he was the best. Homer Jordan winning a national championship puts him in the conversation. But I personally think that Taj Boyd's the best. And the reason I say that is that offense has changed, and Taj had a lot of great weapons around him. But the leadership skills, on the other side of it, you got to consider that here's a guy that when he took over the starting quarterback job at Clemson, the touchdown passing record was 49, and he has 103 now. I mean, he more than doubled. He's thrown more than twice as many touchdown passes as anybody else in school history, and he did it in 3 years. He leaves throwing more completions for more yards and more touchdowns than anybody else in school history. And now, look, the South Carolina thing, I don't think you can overlook that, and that will tarnish his legacy. Still, the other things, when you add up everything, you put it on that tally sheet, and you look down at what his career was about. 2 Orange Bowls, ACC championship, all the passing records, and the leadership. I think you've got to consider him the best in school history.
Right, and talk about, a lot of people obviously think Sammy Watkins is going to go pro, maybe Vic Beasley, but, a big name, Grady Jarrett, decided to come back. Talk about those players a little bit if you could.
Yeah, Sammy's ready. I mean, I think he's the only one that's ready. Sammy Watkins should go. He's going to be a top 10, 15, 20 pick. Now, there's a big difference in 10th or 5th and 10th, and a big difference in 10th and 20th. But that's going to be millions of dollars, and he sets his family up for life. He should go. He is physically ready to do it. Vic Beasley is a great talent and a first-team All-American, but Vic Beasley's going to have a transition to make to the next level. He's not going to be a 4-3 like he is now, a defensive end. He's going to be a guy that's going to have to play an outside linebacker and a 3-4 maybe. I think Vic Beasley physically needs to come back and be more productive in another year. Really, Vic Beasley's only done it for one season. The one that's going to go pro that's not ready but going to, I think, is Martavis Bryant. He has academic issues and family issues and things on those lines that I hear that's going to push him a year early. Some of that, Bashard Breeland had a really good year. I don't think he's ready. Stephon Anthony had a good year. I don't think he's ready. NFL scouts will tell you that unless you're a top 15 or so pick, you're going to be better off by coming back. Barring injury, almost every one of those guys needs to come back. But I think Watkins should go. I think Bryant will go, but I think Bryant probably needs to come back a year.
Right. Well, talk about, I think Clemson matches up better than they did, like you said, with Alabama. I was worried about playing Alabama, but with Ohio State, I think they match up a lot better. It should be a high-scoring game. And just elaborate on that a little bit and talk about, the only other time that Clemson played Ohio State was obviously the 78 Gator Bowl with Woody Hayes, one of the best coaches in college football history. It was bad to see it was Clemson on the other side, but like Danny Ford said this week. But
yeah, that was an interesting game. That was Coach Ford's first game. He was a young head coach. He was going up against the legendary Woody Hayes in a Gator Bowl. And I tell you, some side notes to that game. Clemson had gotten beat badly, 34-3 against Pittsburgh in the Gator Bowl the year before. That's the first time Clemson went to a bowl game since the '59 season. So it was all new. Clemson. Everybody now knows in the national scene about Clemson. Well, back then that wasn't the case. The Woody Hayes thing was interesting because, if it happened nowadays, you'd see all kinds of coverage and replays and video angles, and he'd be interviewed about it. Well, the cameras didn't quite catch it great there, and the announcers didn't quite see it. So there was a lot of folks who left that stadium that night and even got back to South Carolina the next day or two and didn't know anything about it. It did end up costing Woody Hayes his job, rightfully so. That was a great win for Clemson. Tigers finished that season ranked in the top 8 or so in the country, and an 11-win season that year. This year, again, this was a team in Ohio State that had a chance to play for the national championship with one more victory there in the last game. But this is not an unbeatable team. I think Alabama would have been a much more difficult matchup. Ohio State has issues, and Clemson can exploit those because the Tigers match up well with Ohio State. Not to say that Ohio State doesn't match up well with Clemson. I mean, the Buckeyes are favored for a reason. They are the team that was number 2 in the country until last week. They are an awful, powerful, explosive offense. But this is a team that has issues and had issues at several times. The Michigan game, you go back and look at it, Clemson's better than Michigan. And Clemson is offensively better than Michigan State. So I think the Tigers have a chance. They need to play well. People forget, they talk about the Florida State and South Carolina games where they turned it over 10 times. But Clemson beat LSU and Georgia in their last 14 games, and they beat 2 top 10 teams there. The Tigers need to play like that, get that kind of effort, play the chip on their shoulder again, and get a big game victory compared to not what they did against Florida State or South Carolina.
Right, and if you can get a win versus Ohio State, even though they did lose to Michigan State last week, it's such a national brand, like you were talking about. That would be a huge one, I think, in terms of recruiting. And a BCS Bowl, 2 BCS Bowls in 3 years, and obviously the other one didn't end very well versus West Virginia. And you'd like to go out on a high note here.
Yeah, I think Clemson's going to play much better than they did against West Virginia, much better than they did against Florida State or South Carolina. But the key to turnovers, even in the 70 to whatever the last Orange Bowl was there, 70-33 maybe, it was a turnover that turned out. And so ball security will be key. Playing loose again will be key. But I would expect that kind of effort. I think, like I said, a chip on their shoulder. A lot of times Clemson this year had the bulls on their back and was the favorite, and that's a hard role to carry every single week, and that's why you don't see undefeated teams very often. But now this is one where you kind of go in and play loose. You got nothing to lose. Go play hard and represent your school by having fun. And who knows, as a result, might come out with one of the better school victories in school history.
That's right. It's going to be in Miami. Hopefully the weather will be a little bit warmer down there in January. But I think you're right about that. Just have fun. It's a BCS Bowl. You've had a great season, a 10-2 year. Give us your prediction for the game, and give us a couple keys about how Clemson can get a victory.
Well, prediction, I always think Clemson's going to win, man. I'm a
right, that's right.
I'd say maybe in that 38-35, that same Georgia, kind of deal with explosive offenses. The main key, obviously, is turnovers. You can't give Braxton Miller, Carlos Hyde, and that offense, an offensive line. You can't give them short fields, and you can't take away from the momentum. So I think the other major key is going to be third downs. With Connor Shaw in South Carolina, they were able to convert third downs the last few years, and that means that Clemson's explosive offense stays on the sidelines and doesn't really have a rhythm. Defensively, they need to get the Buckeyes off the field on third down, and offensively, they need to convert those third downs to stay on the field. In the end, the Tigers can play with them, and in the end, the Tigers get some confidence level, and I think they'll play well. I really do. I think this team would be focused, and Ohio State has Clemson's attention, which will be big, and I do believe that athletically speaking, the offensive line is a concern because of just how big and powerful they are. But skill-wise, skill position-wise, I think Clemson matches up well with Ohio State, speed and athleticism-wise. So don't turn the ball over. Get off the field on third down and convert third downs on offense. Right,
I totally agree with that. Well, thanks again for joining us this afternoon, and have a Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year, and we'll see you down in South Beach in January. So thanks again.
Great, man. You guys have a great Christmas. We'll see you guys soon.
All right, you too. That's Mickey Plyler of the Mickey Plyler Show every morning from 6 to 9 on WCCP Talk Sports.